Hey guys, welcome to Jen's Creativity Corner. I'm going to show you how to make this book art where you can do character art overlay onto actual book pages. Now, why would you tear out pages of a book? There are lots of reasons, but for me, I'm an author. While I plan to donate most of my proof copies to little free libraries, I do have some that are extra, and so I'm going to take a knife, cut out the pages, and you can see here it is kind of fun. These aren't maybe the best pictures, but overall it looks really great in real life, and it's a fun way to maybe frame it, have it on your wall. You can also, with outlines, make it into basic coloring pages. So where do I get my graphics? First of all, Fiverr is where I go to work with my illustrator, and paint.net is what I use. It is free. I've used it for years. It's simple. I enjoy it. So I'm doing 300 pixels per inch, 8.5 by 11. Now this is because I'm using North American printer paper. If you're international, you would want to adjust this to the size that you guys use. It is different. We do not use A4. And then I'm going to make a second graphic. This one I actually made higher pixels per inch because of the way I had things previously saved. But this one I'm doing 5 by 8 because my book pages, this obviously depends on the book that you're using pages from, mine are 5.5 by 8.5, and since some will get trimmed and I don't want it to be exactly the size, I made it a little bit smaller because you don't want the character art going exactly to the edges. So I'm going here. You can make a little box to help you define the edges, and this is just going to help us frame our templates. So I'm saving the smaller 5 by 8 page. And I'm going to my 8.5 by 11. And putting that essentially in the center. There's not really a way to perfectly center it in this software, so I eyeballed it, and then I'll show you what I did to make sure it prints properly. It was definitely some trial and error, but not that much error, to be honest, with my trials. So here I've kind of centered that. I would save that as my template, and then I'm going to come to some character art that I've commissioned. And I'm going to put her in the middle there. Now, I don't want it full saturation. I want it to be a little transparent so you can see the words that are behind it. That's the fun of having it overlaid onto an actual book page. So I'm not going to use just a regular eraser. I'm going to go to the eraser and then down here to more, and you're going to switch the opacity. Crank that way down, and then it's always smoothest to do as few swipes as possible, so I'm going to make that really big. And we are going to swipe over the character. So that's somewhat transparent. I like it more transparent. So I'm going to go there. I like that. And then I'm going to hide my template layers and save this as a PNG so it has the clear background. Now, I had it as a PNG from my illustrator. And I also got the line art for the ones that I do more for coloring book style. I use Microsoft Word for this. This is how I format my books. So I'm going to come here, and it puts it into the size of the margins. That's not actually what I want, because my initial template, right? The ones that I have printed and the ones that I just showed you are 8.5 by 11. So you're going to come here, switch it down to one of these boxes down below, put fit to page, or fix positioning on page, and then we're going to make that the full 8.5 by 11 size, because as is, that's going to print too small, maybe even not centered. This basically allows the image to go full bleed, but because of the template we've used, we know that even though we're not printing on an 8.5 by 11 size book page, it will be where we want it. Now, the grid lines aren't naturally there. I like them when I work with graphics. But you can go to the view, turn them on and off to check your placement on some things. Then this is the printed off template. So that has the 5x8 printed on there. And I wrote on the top that it was the top because it's not perfectly centered. That way I will always know which way it goes. So I'm just cutting these out as close to the spine as possible so I have maximum space there. Obviously, I don't recommend cutting it on a fancy desk. Use a cutting mat. Be careful. Not a project for little kids. And then the edges are kind of ragged. It's probably best to trim them down beforehand. I actually wait until later. You can see here, there's the top orientation. So that way, what I just put in a word matches everything else that I've already sorted out. So I'm taking this page from this book, and I like to have it, because I'm not a narcissist, I have every other page with my name as the author, and then the book's name. So I like to print on the book's name. I mean, if you really want the author's name showing, go for it. Or you can match up certain scenes. On this one, I did actually have to trim a little bit because there was like a little bit of glue chunk to it because I cut too close to the spine. But I'm going to center that on there. I made notes for myself. Basically, the title should sit on top of the black line. And I try to make sure the two black lines that are peeking out from behind are centered around where I will be trimming the edges to be neat. So just, want everything to look good. And I will show you some fails along the way too. But I'm going to take those, and then I use washi tape. But even washi tape will tear up these pages. Pages can be very different depending on the type of book, what the manufacturer used, but you do want to be careful. Either way, these are not the cheapest, these are not the most expensive quality pages, and I have had problems tearing. So I'll take my washi tape and actually run it several times over like a fuzzy blanket so the lint makes it less sticky. It definitely needs to be sticky enough that it's not peeling up while it's going through the printer and running the printer, but you don't want it tearing your pages. So it's a fine balance, and you can reuse these over and over and over. I have used mine multiple times. So I'm just going to carefully place it on all four sides. Now I only placed it on the top and bottom initially for my first few prints, but sometimes you get some distortion. So I do recommend doing all four sides. So making sure those edges are put down well. They're not going to flip up in the printer and cause jams that break things. And you've got your blank template. See, there's a line when I didn't tape sides. So all four sides is best. And that's one where I didn't tape properly. So part of his hair is actually printed on the tape. So you want to be careful that you get as little tape as possible within the possible printing margin. So we're going to load these bottom down. I'm assuming it depends on the printer you're using, but most your home printer is going to do that. And make sure they're in the right order, right orientation. I accidentally was printing two books at once, and because I didn't think about the way that it fed, I printed the wrong character from the wrong book. So now I just kind of do them one at a time, and then I don't have problems. And you just print those suckers out. I'm going to show you a little bit more tips here on how I use the templates. So because it's not perfectly centered, I marked on each of these the top, and then a reminder, title on the line, and tape just barely, on the very edges of the pages so that it doesn't accidentally get printed on. And that way you can see there's a little bit of space up top. It's not being printed onto the title. It's not going awkwardly too low or too high down at the page number. And that's what I found to be the best orientation. Use up as much space as possible without crowding it. See there, his foot is rather close. And that's also kind of close to the side there. Each one will be individual because, well, the words on the pages are going to be different. And, the placement may be a little different each time, but the template helps you get it pretty darn close. So I'm going to carefully take these off, and if you do notice it starting to tear, which it did here, you want to carefully and slowly start pulling it from a different angle to stop the tear. It's a bit fuzzy, but you see a little bit of damage. Sometimes it's hardly noticeable. Sometimes you might want to actually trim the pages if you have space. Now this one was a bummer because I apparently did not press it down enough because I was filming, and it did actually get pulled up by the printer. It did cause some small distortions in the print, and luckily didn't do any damage to my printer, but it did scare me. This is the first time that it's happened, was when I was filming this. But obviously that portion of the tape I'm gonna chuck. Just something to keep in mind. You're living a little on the edge when you do this project. Like I said, it's probably best to trim it when you are first putting it on the template, but I do afterwards. Either way works. Hopefully use a better quality one than this. I couldn't find my sharp paper cutter. What I got here is a cheap dollar store frame, and I'm just gonna take that, face it out. Had some cardstock that I cut to size, and it is a fun way to display some cool art from a book that you love. Again, you can do these more as coloring page styles if you have the outlines. And if you are interested in my books or my Etsy shop where I sell some of these for my books, definitely check out the links down below. Thanks for subscribing and liking, and I hope you have a great day.